All right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's take some more chat.
All right, Tony wants to know, since the left took control of the government, they haven't attempted to pass one thing the left voters wanted, but instead have attacked the right via gun rights and removing everything Trump did. Do you think the Democrat voters are starting to wake up?
I'm still thinking about him being electrocuted.
Me too.
I think some voters are starting to wake up and not realizing it. I think if you were to poll, well, no, I don't think. I know that if you poll individual Democrat voters on the actual gun control legislation, not do you ask them, do you think there should be background checks, which there are, but do you think there needs to be a full-out ban on AR-15s? Most of them say no. Do you think there needs to be a magazine limit? Most of them. Do you think there needs to be a waiting period? Most of them say no. Do you think there needs to be $800 a year minimum insurance to own a firearm? Every single hunter would say no. So it is the biggest losing issue for Democrats.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing, and what always bothers me is when you have people go like Jim Belushi, I remember him saying, well, not the mediocrity, though that bothers me too, where he said, he was on Fox News. That's what's most offensive.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I'm a Democrat from Chicago, right? As though you have to because you're from your.
Yeah.
You get a lot of people like that in Detroit.
Of course.
Who are like, I like some of the things Trump says, and I don't like that they're sending the Ford jobs over to Mexico, but hey, I'm in the UAW. I have to. And I do think that if the Republicans play it right, I think you are seeing a restructuring of the Democratic and Republican parties in that rich white bitches have way too much control over the Democratic Party right now, and that's why you're seeing a record number of blacks and legal Latin immigrants, or put it this way, if you are in the Democratic Party and you unironically say Latin X, Mexicans hate you.
Yeah.
But they don't know it yet.
Yeah.
Because they've never heard Latinx. They think maybe you have a speech impediment. So there's a disconnect because, again, the gatekeepers of information try and make sure that the messaging is so sanitized and packaged well. But on the individual issues, this is the problem with broad polls. They go, well, most people support expanded health care. Okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Do most people support a severe penalty? Do most people support not being able to get privatized healthcare, like in a lot of socialized healthcare countries? Do most people support the idea that doctors can be jailed if they're offering services privately? When we go to gun control, do most people support not being able to have a handgun, a basic semi-automatic handgun to defend your house, which is what a lot of these gun control measures are aimed at? When people say, hey, how do you feel about immigration? Well, by the way, even on a broad poll right now, 60-something% of Americans, I think it was 67%, saw it as a crisis, and Democrats largely responsible for it. But most will say, well, yeah, I think we need to have a path to citizenship. Okay. Do you think that we should have tens of thousands of people being released into the interior of the United States without any kind of vetting? Well, no. When they say, hey, we need to protect voting rights, that's a broad poll. What do you think about voting rights? Well, I think we should protect them.
Yeah.
Do you think 16-year-olds should be able to register to vote? Well, I'm not retarded. Do you think that people should be required to have a voter identification? Well, what do you mean? Do you mean like, a membership to the local country club? No. Any identification at all, even if it's free. Well, yeah, I'm not retarded, right? When you pull them on these issues, but if you just say voters' rights, women's choice, gun control, humane border solutions.
Right.
They poll broadly pretty well, but I think now we are going to have to get into the era of the nitty-gritty. And yes, I do think that even a lot of people who identify as Democrats, for example, like my Uber driver, and you mentioned Middle Eastern cab drivers in Detroit, and even people in Chicago right now.
More New York.
Even in New York, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll ever meet more conservative people than immigrants in Queens.
Yeah.
Oh, probably not. No, you're right.
Yeah, and Arab, Greek, Italian, Irish, a lot of, including, and when I say immigrants, I mean when you get like a lot of African-American immigrants, and I mean actual African-American immigrants. I mean people who are coming in from places like, Cameroon, Sudan.
Yes.
They tend to be very conservative. I don't mean someone who's 4 generations in American who's black.
First
generation actual African-Americans are very conservative in the boroughs of New York.
The ones that I've talked to that have driven me in a cab and we've just started discussing things, it's because their country is awful.
Right.
And they think that we don't appreciate everything that we have.
That's exactly what my cab driver said.
Yeah.
He said, I tell people, okay, really? You've always been in America? Okay, how about you go to Syria, especially now that Biden is there and he's bombing it like he's the Beach Boys, which I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But that's what he said.
They just know the American thing.
I don't know if
I
that's
thought it was a
connected.
reference to the John McCain bomb Iran. I don't know.
Could be.
It was the only mental connection I could make. It was like he's the Beach Boys. So no, I think hopefully that answers your question, and that comes down to you having to do your part with your communication. That's what Change My Mind is. That's what Change My Mind is, having those conversations so that when people are forced to rationalize their own positions, people are inherently more conservative. And what do I mean by that? Well, Dennis Prager has talked about this, and we've talked about it. If you believe that people are inherently good if left to their own devices, well, okay, then you absolutely can justify being a liberal. If you believe that if you believe that human beings are inherently flawed, you can use the term evil, or certainly, as we believe, fallen and sinful, right? If left to our own devices, because if you follow your heart, like every Disney movie says, you're going to be a selfish asshole. For proof, see children who aren't disciplined. If you understand human nature, then you understand the only way to safeguard that is to not bond all human beings with other human beings who are allowed to be sinful, because then that just becomes bondage for all. You are, as a conservative, saying, hey, we don't link together the guy who started a business, the guy who stayed open during COVID, the guy who employs 15 people, the guy who decided to not take on student loans because he worked 2 jobs while he was going to a community college, and the person who took on massive loans to study gender studies with a minor in underwater basket weaving, and let's put them in the same tax bracket and give them the same kind of loan forgiveness. No, that ends up being bondage and a punishment for those who have actually worked hard. And by the way, it's a punishment for people working hard, period, whether they're successful or not. It's a punishment against working hard. It removes the satisfaction, it removes the feeling of accomplishment just in knowing that you tried. They are the Democrats are the Homer Simpsons in this. The lesson here, kids, is never try.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.